Hey, Kris here. We're watching Thoughty2. And this is... sorry. There might have been another race before humans. Let's get into it. There was a... the thumbnail was a archaeological dig with a dinosaur face, or like a dragon head sticking out of it.
Here. The advent of the internet has changed human society in many ways, both good and bad. On the plus side, sites like Wikipedia, Google, and YouTube have given us entirely new ways to learn. Online stores have revolutionized the way we shop, and social media has reminded us how important it is to make other people think that our lives are way better than they actually are. On the flip side, the internet has also provided a platform for basement gnomes to gather and share absolutely mental conspiracy theories. Did you know that some people genuinely believe the war in Iraq was orchestrated to prevent Saddam Hussein from using a Stargate to start an intergalactic war? Or what about the people who think the Large Hadron Collider at CERN was built not to study physics, but to summon an Egyptian god? Flat Earthers, I'm still on the fence about. I know their ideas are a little radical, but can so many people really be wrong? I mean, seriously, there are quite literally hundreds of thousands of flat earthers spread all around the globe. Wait a minute. Arguably, the most ridiculous conspiracy theory out there claims that planet Earth is currently being run by a master race of shape-shifting, blood-drinking aliens. Now, I'll admit there are a few people in positions of power who could probably pass for lizard men under the right lighting. But it should be obvious to anyone with a fully functioning brain that Earth isn't ruled by highly intelligent lizards. At least, not anymore. Because, according to something called the Silurian hypothesis, there's a chance that lizard men were indeed in charge at some point in the distant past. Named after an ancient race of intelligent reptiles from British TV series Doctor Who, the Silurian hypothesis was published in the International Journal of Astrobiology in 2018 by Gavin Schmidt, a British climatologist, and American astrophysicist Adam Frank. But whilst the name of the paper is straight out of sci-fi, the science behind it is deadly serious. At its heart, the Silurian hypothesis is based on a simple question. Were we humans the first advanced civilization to exist on Earth? Now I know what you're thinking, of course we bloody were. But before we dump the Silurian hypothesis into the loony bin along with reptilian conspiracy theory, let me rephrase that question. If there was an advanced civilization on Earth that died out millions of years ago, how would we know? And don't say because we would have found a dinosaur with a Nokia 3310 up its arse. Because, as it happens, there's a good chance we wouldn't. The Silurian hypothesis may be named after fictional lizard people, but this hypothetical ancient civilization could have been anything. Other hominids, ancient dolphins, squid people, even man-bear pig. It might seem unlikely that human-like intelligence evolved millions of years before we did, but there's no reason it shouldn't have. We have a bad habit of thinking humans represent the pinnacle of evolution, that we're a kind of end state that life has been striving towards for the last 3.5 billion years. But that isn't how evolution works. There is no end goal, and no species is more evolved than any other. Intelligence is just an evolutionary adaptation that comes with its pros and cons, and it's evolved many times in many different forms on Earth. Given the right circumstances, there's no reason another highly intelligent species couldn't have evolved in the distant past. According to Schmidt and Frank, there has been enough.
You would have to think, how long would bone be here? Not like dinosaur bone and stuff like that, but okay, dinosaur bone. We're finding them and they're 65 million years ago, right? Well, 300 million years. What's the erosion process like? Do you know what I'm saying? Very possible. I doubt it, but it's possible.
fossil fuel on Earth to power a civilization like our own since the aptly named Carboniferous period about 350 million years ago. So, it's possible that another intelligent species evolved on Earth in the distant past. And if one did, it would have had enough fossil fuels on tap to build a world-spanning industrial civilization. Intuitively, you might be thinking that if that indeed did happen, we'd probably have noticed by now. But it turns out you can sweep an awful lot of history under a 350 million year old carpet. We know about ancient civilizations like the Incas, Mayans, and Romans because of the artifacts they left behind. We can dig up their pottery and coins, or find traces of their long-lost settlements buried in the soil. In some cases, we don't even need to dig because the evidence is just sitting around on the surface, like at Stonehenge or Machu Picchu. When viewed in the context of the length of a human life, Earth might seem like a fairly stable place. But on a geological timescale, things look very different. Mountains rise and fall. Volcanoes spew forth enough lava to bury entire continents. Oceans dry up or shift position. And the combined forces of the wind, rain, snow, and ice brutally scour every inch of the planet's surface. And we can't forget the relentless grind of plate tectonics, which ultimately removes and recycles the very ground upon which we stand. Traces of ancient civilizations might linger for hundreds of thousands of years after the civilization that made them disappears. But over a period of millions of years, even mighty monuments like the pyramids at Giza will be ground into dust. The very same will be true of our own monuments and cities when ChatGPT goes rogue and murders everyone. According to Schmidt and Frank, after about 4 million years, all direct physical evidence of a globe-spanning industrial civilization like ours would be utterly gone. It's hard to believe from our limited human perspective.
You would have to question, if they did, why didn't they ever at least go to the moon? Why wouldn't that have been an objective if you're going to leave space? And I'm not saying that they wouldn't have, but the only thing really on the moon now is, a rover and, human footprints. Oh, and there's a plaque there where we can shine a laser to and it'll bounce back, and that tells us how far away the moon gets away from Earth every year. It just seems weird that you're first leaving the planet. Oh, wow. Your first leaving the planet situation, you wouldn't have went to the moon is like a starting ground. You know what I mean?
But if we all disappeared tomorrow, 5 million years from now, aliens could colonize Earth and never even realize we existed. Okay, so we wouldn't necessarily find out about an ancient civilization by digging up their long-lost cities or artifacts. But what about fossils? The oldest fossils, cyanobacteria, date back almost to the dawn of life itself. And the oldest animal fossils are almost 900 million years old. If there really was a globe-spanning civilization of intelligent creatures right here on Earth, wouldn't we have found their fossils by now? Maybe, but probably not. Fossils only form under very specific conditions. There are multiple factors involved, but most importantly, the organism in question needs to be completely buried in an oxygen-free environment soon after death. That's far more likely to happen in some environments than others, which creates natural biases in the fossil record. For example, we know relatively little about ancient species that live predominantly in mountain or jungle environments, because those ecosystems rarely produce fossils. Mountainous regions are dominated by erosion rather than deposition, and jungles are full of scavengers that constantly turn over the soil. By far the most common place for fossils to form is in the ocean, because animals that die there often end up at the very bottom where they might get buried in oxygen-poor sand or mud. For that reason, a staggering 99% of all fossils come from marine animals. But even there, things are skewed. For example, soft-bodied creatures like jellyfish and squid almost never fossilize. What I'm trying to say is that the fossil record is an amazing window into the past, but like my chest hair, it's embarrassingly patchy. Thanks to the inherent rarity of fossilization, it's thought that only around 0.1% of all the species that ever lived are represented in the fossil record. The other 99.9%, we're talking several billion species, are just gone. We have no way of knowing what they were or when and how they lived. In other words, if there was an advanced civilization on Earth millions of years ago, we certainly couldn't rely on fossils to identify them. And if we couldn't detect them in the fossil record or by finding the remains of their artifacts and cities, we would have no way of knowing they existed at all.
That's a pretty crazy stat. I mean, there's a lot that is missing that, you'd never know about. Man, I'm on the fence on this, where I'm just like, nah, and then I'm like, maybe, nah, maybe.
Or would we? It's true that we might not be able to directly detect an ancient civilization by finding bits of them or the things that they left behind, but there may be another way to track them down. By using ourselves as a model. We humans aren't just building cities, motorways, and new Starbucks everywhere. We're also fundamentally changing the makeup of our planet. We're burning fossil fuels, which is shifting the balance of carbon isotopes in the atmosphere. We're rerouting the nitrogen cycle of the entire planet through the use of industrial fertilizers. We're digging up vast quantities of rare earth elements for use in electronics. And we're dumping plastic into the oceans at a rate of about 14 million tons per year. Global temperatures are rising, sea levels are rising, coastal erosion is rising, and oceanic oxygen levels are falling. And we've possibly just triggered our planet's 6th major extinction event. Yeah, to summarize, we're causing absolute bloody mayhem, and much of this madness will eventually be recorded in the rocks that will one day make up the human era, also known as the Anthropocene in the geological record. If millions of years from now, a sufficiently advanced species was to study this Anthropocene layer in Earth's rock strata, they wouldn't need to call Sherlock Holmes to see that some long-dead species had had one hell of a house party and never cleaned up after itself. If an industrial civilization similar to our own once lived here on Earth, they probably would have left behind a techno-signature in rocks from their era that will resemble the ones we're in the process of creating right now. And here's where things get really interesting, because it turns out we've already found one. The geological record tells us that about 55.5 million years ago, in a period known as the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, or PETM, Earth went through some serious changes. The ratio of atmospheric carbon isotopes shifted dramatically, global temperatures and sea levels rose sharply, and oceanic oxygen levels plummeted. Sound familiar? There was even a mass extinction event similar to the one some scientists say we're experiencing now. Scientists are pretty confident that all these changes were caused by a massive release of fossil carbon into the atmosphere, but they can't seem to figure out where all that carbon came from. But interestingly enough, one kind of animal seems to have avoided this mass extinction event entirely. During the PETM, lizards appear to have thrived. So, lizard men confirmed, right? Sadly, probably not. Whilst nobody knows exactly what caused the PETM, scientists are of the unanimous opinion that it wasn't blood-drinking lizards. I know, shock. The most popular theory is that it was caused by either a massive volcanic event, a comet impact, or the release of massive quantities of methane sequestered beneath the ocean floor. The PETM might not be the handiwork of a long-lost intelligent civilization, but it does highlight a really important point. Even if an ancient civilization did leave behind some kind of techno-signature within Earth's rocks, identifying it won't be easy. After all, it's hard to draw definitive conclusions about what happened tens of millions of years ago by studying 2 centimeters of old rock. We're also making plenty of assumptions about what exactly we're looking for. Something a bit like us, basically. If our hypothetical ancient civilization did things slightly differently, particularly if they didn't rely heavily on fossil fuels, then we've got no chance of finding them. The same would be true if they died out before reaching their own version of the Industrial Revolution. An ancient society similar to our own in the Middle Ages would have left no trace whatsoever. Ultimately, the Silurian hypothesis isn't really about proving whether or not we were Earth's first major civilization. It's a thought experiment designed to get us pondering the possibility. Schmidt and Frank...
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not looking at it like, oh yeah, no, I'm just looking at it like, that would be really cool if it was true. But more than likely, I'm going to say I'm going to go on a limb and say I'm 99.9% sure there wasn't. But I'm leaving that 0.1 in case somebody proves me wrong, then I can say, well, I wasn't 100%, now was I?
Themselves have made it clear they think it's highly unlikely that an advanced civilization is lurking down the back of the giant sofa that is our planet's long history. But their work has proven we can't rule it out. Perhaps evidence of some unimaginably advanced prehistoric species is out there, buried somewhere beneath our feet, just waiting for us to unearth it. It wouldn't be the first time either. Let me tell you why. If you travel back in time 200 years or so and asked a random person on the street whether giant 100-ton reptiles once roamed the Earth, they'd probably have burnt you at the stake. The first dinosaur...
George Washington never knew dinosaurs existed. So, Thomas Jefferson did. But what he knew of them, I don't know. Now, George Washington might have been told they existed. He was just like, yeah, no, they didn't. You know, but as far as I know, he never even knew of them.
Dinosaur fossils weren't recognized until the early 19th century, and the word dinosaur didn't even exist until 1842. Evidence proving the existence of dinosaurs is all over the place, on all 7 of Earth's continents. We simply didn't have the technology or the understanding to see what it was. Will the same be true for lizard men? I bloody hope so. Thanks for watching.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm like I say, I'm 99.9% sure. I'm not 100% sure because really anymore, who knows? Is it possible? I doubt it. But is it improbable? I don't know. It would be really cool though, wouldn't it? Because then you'd want to know what happened. Did they go extinct? Did they just leave? Are they the aliens that catch us and give us anal probes now? We don't know. Okay, we're going to end this here. There's a thanks button on the channel. You can donate. You don't have to. All donations are appreciated. Subscribe if you aren't, and this is what you like. Hit the bell if you do, and give a thumbs up. All the things I ask. One of them's, you know, your choice in donating. Thumbs up mandatory. Until next time, have a good day, have a good night.